hear you because I'm on radio, but you had a sign that said fair share equals flat tax.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard the president say over and over again, everybody needs to pay their fair share. He has his buddy, the rich Warren Buffett out there saying, gee, I pay less rate than my secretary. That doesn't seem fair. And yet there's not a single proposal that President Obama or his minions have offered that would bring Buffett to paying the same thing that his secretary does, the same rate. And that's why, there are so many people that have been proposing, you want real fairness, put flat tax. If you make more, you pay more. You make less, you pay less. And let's don't stop there. Let's make it a flat tax across the board. Capital gains, 15%, which Warren Buffett's paying now. It's income tax, 15%, corporate tax, 15%, gift tax, 15%. Let's just make it across the board, and you would see the economy explode. But the other thing that really gets me about the hypocrisy in this town is to have the White House telling us, and the president out there making speech after speech, if you make less than $250,000, you don't pay more tax. He said that over and over. And in Obamacare itself, if you make $14,000 as an individual or more, you're going to pay an extra 2.5% income tax, an extra $371. If you can't afford on $14,000, the thousand, some estimate $12,000 for the basic Obamacare policy that's now mandated. I mean, there's going to be massive taxes on the middle class. And even bigger irony, Andrew, that the last vote we took today, did you read what votes we were doing today?
No, I didn't get to read the docket.
Well, you missed so much, but the last vote we took today would eliminate the word lunatic from federal law, the two places that it's mentioned in federal code.
Are you changing it to bat crap crazy?
Well, it eliminates lunatic, just the term, and I thought how ironic, and so I was a little surprised, but I was the only one that voted against eliminating the word lunatic from the federal code, and I had some reporters hit me up and say, why'd you vote against it? You're the only one. And I said, at a time when we're about to go bankrupt as a nation, not only should we not eliminate the use of the word lunatic, we ought to apply it to anybody who thinks Washington ought to be about business as usual. That's a lunatic.
Can I ask you a dumb question? This is a really dumb question. How is, for all this talk of fair share and skin in the game and you got to pay your fair share, how is it that somebody's fair share could be no share?
Isn't that ridiculous? It's crazy. It's not. It's not. And that's why, some of us have been talking, well, let's talk about what really is fair. And, people have already forgotten, Andrew. I know you had, you talk about it all the time, but it's the spending that's killing us. And you go back to July of 2011, when we were taking up the debt ceiling crisis, and Geithner's out there saying, come August 2nd, we're all going over the cliff, it's going to be horrible. That gummit, we keep going over the cliff. It seems to me we went off the cliff on the debt ceiling, and now we're just plunging down from ledge to ledge with each new stupid thing we do. And I'm hoping we'll stop before we get all the way to the bottom, and start climbing our way out. But it was to eliminate $1.2 trillion, and you remember S&P said, "Look, that's ridiculous. You're overspending the $2.5 trillion you bring in by an extra $1.5 trillion. You're spending $3.94 trillion. This is nuts. Unless you cut at least $4 trillion over 10 years, we're going to have to downgrade you." And they didn't.
Wait, I got to jump in with this one. Representative Louie Gohmert from Texas is joining us. This is driving me nuts. This talk of cutting spending. Are we talking about? I'm not just talking about you and I. Whenever I hear somebody in Washington talk about cutting spending, what they really mean is proposed spending or automatic upticks in spending. They're not talking about spending $1 less next year than they did this year.
That's right. And because of the automatic increase in the baseline of every federal agency, every federal department's budget. That's why for 8 years I've been pushing a zero baseline budget. Let's go to no automatic increases. And and the fact is, and this is how bad CBO is, we tried to get them to score going to a zero baseline where there were no automatic increases in our budget every year. I mean, if you just took the last 2 or 3 years, then it would be, you would eliminate more than $1.2 trillion easily, and not by cutting a dime, just by staying where we are, no automatic increases. And boom, that would save the sequestration, except CBO says, no, we can't score it. It's not that it won't save that, we just can't score it because you have to use a formula every year, and the formula may change ever so slightly, and then over a 10-year period, we would exacerbate the change. So we just can't score it. Andrew, it would cut a tremendous, over $1 trillion from the federal budget over 10 years. It would have done what they were trying to do with the debt ceiling bill. So it ought to be something that we pass, and to Paul Ryan's credit, he got that bill through the committee, the budget committee, and I did get a promise from Speaker Boehner he would bring it to the floor if Paul got it out of committee. Paul got it, voted it out of committee, and then the Speaker kept his word. He brought it to the floor. We voted it. We voted for it. I don't know why that wasn't an election issue. I told Paul, look, Paul, you shepherded that bill, the zero baseline budget, through, and people get it. They don't get automatic increases. Why don't we make a big election about the Senate and demand they pass it before the election? And he pointed out, well, he's not getting to choose the election issues for the campaign. But he promised if I'm president of the Senate, we will get that bill passed next year through the Senate.
Well, here's the problem you're up against. John Boehner is doing the job of the Democrats for them and purging conservatives from prominent committees. We saw what happened to Dave to Schweikert out of Arizona, and he's coming on Monday to talk about it. I want to ask you, I want to throw this one at you, Louie Gohmert's joining us, that the Republicans, not you, you're a conservative, the Republicans are worried about this public perception of who's going to take the blame for the fiscal cliff. The liberals and media have all joined together to say it's going to be Republicans. That seems to be scaring Republicans. Instead of accepting that, why are Republicans, including John Boehner, not saying, wait a second, all of this power resides in the House. What we're dealing with is one man who is holding up this process over one group of taxpayers. We have the majority in the House. He has a mandate to be president. We have a mandate to lead the House of Representatives. This is where the power lies. The only thing standing in the way between tax rate reductions or spending reductions or a streamlined government is one man, and he's holding it up over one small group of taxpayers. Why is John boehner not going with that one? He is playing a game of blackjack with a king and an ace like he's only gotten 11.
Well, our leadership has not done the best job of messaging. Obviously, we're never going to.
Do you want me to help? Because I'm pretty good at this stuff.
But it's crazy, and we ought to be out there pushing the things we believe in and what we know will fix the country. And instead, we've got this horrible message out there. And you bring up my four friends that got booted off A committees. Andrew, I have not even bothered to apply for an A committee because I know, because I'm so outspoken, why give them the enjoyment of preventing me from getting an A committee? So
what do some of these Republicans think they have to lose here? When it comes right down to it, you have one man, the president, who is holding up this entire fiscal cliff thing over one group of taxpayers because the Democrats want everyone to pay more in taxes because they want to spend more. They are literally saying to everyone else, and Republicans are accepting this message, and I don't know why.
You're right, and that's what I don't understand. That's why I decided, well, look, if our leaders aren't going to be messaging what we really stand for, let's talk about some of the great things we'd like to see happen, like a flat tax. But the messaging is not good, and then in the middle of all that, be punishing four conservatives for voting as their constituents want them to vote, and return them to Congress because they liked the way they were voting, and then you punish those guys. You know, they don't. The Speaker never dreams of punishing a moderate for voting the way their district wants. That's just ridiculous. But you know, they've been encouraged by our leadership. Look, in fact, we've all been told, look, everybody in our party in Congress has a chance to earn their way into a leadership position, into an A committee. Everybody does. And the example has been given that, you know, back in 1998, Mr. Boehner at that time was defeated for conference chair by J.C. Watts. And as the speakers pointed out before, you know, he worked hard. He earned the trust of his party, and by doing so, when after the elections in 2000, he was able to become the chairman of the Education Committee. And I think that's great that he was able to, whatever you got to do in this town to earn your way back to being a committee chairman. But he was education chairman, and that's such a great example, because if you read George W. Bush's book, he points out that if it had not been for the education chairman, John Boehner, he might not have gotten No Child Left Behind passed through. So that really worked out well for the country.
I just, for the life of me, don't understand why.
You know I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, I do. And what I don't understand is it that Boehner and some of the okay, for example, over in the Senate, we keep hearing that you conservatives are the problem. And they'll say, oh, look at Todd Akin, or look at Richard Murdoch, or Christine O'Donnell. Well, we know why those guys lost. We know why Christine O'Donnell lost. But they never say, well, you conservatives gave us Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Ron Johnson. As a matter of fact, the conservative game plan wins just about every time.
Yep. Well, and of course, Todd Akin said a stupid thing. Todd's a friend. I had no idea where that came from, what he said.
But even Todd Akin knows why. He knows why he lost.
Even so, I was talking to Todd about his race. He said 2 weeks before the election, he was coming back. He was breaking even. It looked like he was going to go ahead. And then the end of the election cycle, she did nothing but run commercials that featured nothing but Republican leaders, Republican senators, saying he wasn't fit to be a senator, don't elect him, he's terrible, he should withdraw. But then he was told he had a $3 million donor for a super PAC that was going to run commercials, and yet the Republican leaders went after his vendors, told them if they ever wanted to do any more business with the Republican Party, that they better drop Todd as a client, a customer. They better not. To donors, you better not donate anymore. You better not do a super PAC to help him, or else. I mean, good grief, this guy had actually, even after the stupid thing he said, he had a chance to come back and win, but our own party turned on him and just eviscerated him. He made a mistake. Democrats make mistakes all the time. But
the other Democrats don't eat them alive. There was no Democrat saying, hey, wait a second, Claire McCaskill's got a private jet that she owns and she's billing the taxpayers for using it? Well, that's not a good idea. We should do something about that. As a matter of fact, they joined her in her saying this is no big deal.
Yeah, I would have hoped that, you know, as conservatives, we would have said, you know, Todd screwed up. But he said he was sorry, he made a mistake. Now, let's move on. Half the time we can't even get the Democrats to admit they made a mistake. They just get indignant and go on and double down.
All right, Louie Gohmert, thanks for joining us. We'll have you back real soon. You know, we'll have you on TV. You're no stranger to the program.
Love being with you, Andrew. Thank you.
All right, 1-866-95-PATRIOT.